Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm More Gravity. Let's play some chess. Today I'll be playing on the LeeChess.org server, where I'm known as Jay Wild. If you see Jay Wild uh, up here in the upper right of your viewing area, uh, that's because on LeeChess.org I'm known as Jay Wild. Not Jane. I know probably one or two people named Jane. And here we go. I'm going to play, go to create a game. I have my rating range as wide on both sides as possible. 5 minutes per side plus 3. Maybe. Let's try 10-5. And we'll do Queen's Pawn opening. My opponent is playing. Maybe the Queen's Gambit declined in a different move order. We'll see. Okay. So, just to be sure, game's over. I won. I won the game. Is when the most natural response to queen at g5 to e3 check is is exactly as my opponent played it. Queen at f1 to f2, blocking the check, and calculations would follow quickly of queen takes queen, queen takes queen, and then black does not have enough rooks to penetrate on the c file, as clearly is the focus of the latter third of this game. Okay, so but here's the thing: is this is a moment where initiative is extremely important. Black has the initiative. Black does not have to capture on f2, though I will add that's the natural way to calculate in this position. Black has a secondary target on c1, a free rook, and even more at that, it's a rook that black will capture with check, making white's path to any sort of victory extremely difficult. The next move is queen takes rook on c1, and I would say queen takes rook on c1 check, and you don't want to throw your queen in front for a loss on e1 or for a trade on f1. The white queen's gonna stay where she is. H1's out of sorts, can't be is an illegal move. So the king is gonna move to h2. This is the best move for white. Other moves lose almost immediately. And then the king is cramped here. Black's queen on c1 has with the king on h2. Black can play queen to f for check, and the black queen is protected, very importantly in this type of tactic or maneuver, protected by her pawn on e5 and attacking both white's queen and white's king, which mean even with moves that block, for instance here, g2 to g3, there will be at least a swap of queens. So let's play that out. Let's go to the analysis board first of all. Analysis board. Okay. So here, black to move, of course, pick up the extra rook. White will play king to h2. It's the best move. Moves like even queen to f1, still a trade of queens, right? With the white king being the last one to trade or to capture, and then even then, the c file is ready to be busted completely open by black. So these are white's king moves to h2, and then this is what they call like just you wouldn't at this stage of time, I wouldn't calculate quite directly quite this deep. Pretty much the line ends after the rook on c1 has fallen, and black is now a rook's worth of material for the better. But these, when a position gets shaken up like that, there's a little bit of shaking up in this position, you'll find occasionally the entrails, the leftovers, just make it that much sweeter. When black plays queen to f4 check, white can retreat king to g1, and black will force the trade of queens. or white can capture queen takes f4, and black recaptures e5 takes f4, and it's still all over in terms of the war, the battle. This particular game is complete because black will storm the c file and win. Let's see that. Can I play this against the computer? Yes. Continue from here. Play with computer. Strength is 8. Is that the highest strength? Okay, yes, for sure. I will play as black. No, I don't want to play this What? Okay, I think we have what we want here. So we are now a rook ahead in a with queens off the board, and black is going to storm through this position. How we want to deal with this is up to us, and to some extent the time controls. Let's close things down first. G4, just really sucking the life out of any counterplay that white might otherwise have. Now, rook at c2 is what wants to make room for a doubling along a horizontal, along a rank, and you could go. The rook might go to b2 and threaten the pawn on b3. Can't be defended by the rook without counterattack. Or you could go to rook at c2 to d2 and attack the pawn on d3. I'm now seeing that along this ladder movement, the white rook can protect the d3 pawn, at least for the moment, and we might have our second rook come through and completely bust things open. So why don't we do that? And Stockfish make Stockfish's move, and Stockfish has played b4. I'm not going to give up a free pawn like that. And black forces the rooks to trade, anticipating this shot in the dark of pawn at a5 to a6. These rooks will be traded on the back rank. And that's game over. Okay. So that's the end of the game. But let's take a look at what got us, me and my opponent, to that point. This is the end of the game. Oh, profile. This. Okay. Give me a minute to get ready here. Try the analysis board. Make sure everything's aligned on my broadcast. Good, we're good, we're good. Alright. This might be a fairly lengthy explanation. There's a lot of complicated things in this particular game. And I think we went to moves in about the 50s with the termination, with the continue with computer there. So 29 full moves before resignation. Now, turn the browser on. Do not want any arrows. I want lines, but no arrows. Apologize for any. I apologize for taking this time to find out. I don't want this blue arrow. You don't sit down. Nobody at a chess tournament sets up his pieces while his opponent sets up his pieces, and then blue arrows start spawning on the C file. That doesn't happen in real chess tournaments. In real over-the-board chess tournaments. There we go. Alright, so we got our evaluation gauge, which is fine. And we're ready to roll. This is the Petrov defense, also known as the Russian game. Often, this position will turn into 4 knights. Other than that, it's its own beast unto itself. It's its own granddaddy of openings. It's such a, I don't know. I love the Petrov defense. It's like, it's just, there's something simplistic about it. Something straightforward. The symmetry of a figure skating dance or something. And it's also called the Russian games. And the Russians perform very well in couples figure skating, so we'll keep that in mind. Okay, so here we have, I managed to, on move 3, play c7, c5. Now at this moment, black is a little bit at risk. The knight at f3 could capture e5, and that's actually the recommended move. So yeah, so knight takes e5 is superior to the other moves. You'll see in rapid or blitz games or bullet games online, you can sneak in these small strategic oversights, I guess. The strategy is there. You have to have better control of the center. Sometimes, if you're white in this position, you say, I don't know. Is this a known gambit by black? Is this a trap? If I take on e5, am I falling into getting pushed back too much by some pawns, and then my pieces are going to get forked on queen side or something. It's not. It's not. But you can't, in a limited amount of time, rule that out. So most of the time, your opponent will play something a little bit less bold, as knight takes e5 would be. My opponent played a2 to a3, which is it's a bit too slow. Played a strong opponent, but this move a2 to a3, in my opinion, no, it's too slow for a game featuring classic center occupation and attack. So knight to c6, and now black is sort of out of the woods. He's now protecting the pawn on e5 and has a knight on c6 behind this awesome pawn on c5. Let's see, the evaluation is just about equal. Black has equalized because he has a pawn on c5, and even though it is white's turn to move, this is an equal board. The engine here is saying 0.1 in white's favor, so a tenth of a pawn in white's favor. I'd say we'll call that equal. And the bishop on f1 develops to c4. This is one of the two most common and active deployments for the f1 bishop. And I think overall the common deployments are with the fianchetto on g2, and that's for sure. That's a good deployment. Passively on e2, actively on c4, and then again actively on b5. Pawn at h7 to h6. So this move is it might seem like his move was so, I criticized h2 to a2 to a3 for being, I criticized a2 to a3 for being slow, and h2 to h3 is also slow, but it's insanely important, extremely important that black not allow white's f3 knight to come to g5. So then there would be attacks on f7 for which black is not ready to fend off once the knight has come to g5. Black needs a little more, black would need the initiative to fend off this attack. For instance, e7, or bishop to e7 and then castling is fine. But h2 to h3 prevents the knight from going or traveling to g5. So, right, because we would need initiative to fend off this double attack and maybe some reinforcements riding in, right? We don't have enough initiative to do that, so instead I played a move that allows black to control more space, specifically this exact square on g5. Not only that, but if black were to castle kingside, then as many as 15 or 30 moves down the line, there could be a back rank checkmate attempt against black's king, and he'll have h7, to which he can escape instead of being checkmated right there, dead in his tracks, with a pawn still on h7. And we see bishop to a2, and that's a sensible move. If I were white here, maybe we would want to focus on developing and castling. Bishop to a2 is the type of move white would make if black had made moves to force it. to make it the only way that one of the only way, or one of only a few ways, for the bishop to survive. For instance, after a6 and b5 by black, then yes, bishop a2 is a fine move. But making it ahead of those two moves is, I call it seeing ghosts. And we're not in Versailles, but that opera reference there. We're not in Versailles, so that's not the great move. Also, it takes a move for White to do this, but if White waits for a7 to a6 and then b7 to b5, Black has spent two moves in making the bishop go away, flee, making the bishop flee. So White would be up relatively one more unit of initiative, one more tempo, upon waiting for a6 and then b5. On the other hand, this knight on a2 is nestled on this bishop on a2 is nestled there with extreme scope and is controlling many squares on the chessboard. So it's kind of like making a valued minor piece. I think there's some knowledge of calling this as White is making a valued minor piece. Black's in no hurry. We want to get our knights moving so they're not tied down to defending, like on d6 is defending e5. I think in retrospect, I played d6. It's probably still best move because Black's dark squared bishop is going to be the bad bishop on this game. By the way, the pawns, or even a knight in this case, are positioned. So we get d6, or I should say we get pawn from d7 to d6 out of the way, and then Black's light squared bishop can become one or two most powerful, most important pieces. Well, three. We'll say three. The queen's gonna be there. Then I'd say probably the knight on c6, and then Black's light squared bishop. So that's how that is. Then the knight on f6 is also very powerful. So those three pieces are all in great spots. Bishop here, knights here and here, and the dark squared bishop on f8. Is weak, and these three are strong. The f8 bishop is weak. Comparison: White has three strong. White has two strong knights. A bishop on a2 that's almost super strong. A very strong bishop on a2, and a bishop on c1 that is looking for breathing space. Might be able to get there by landing on e3 sometime. So let's go on. Okay, so we're playing four corners here. Get your skis. Both of them. The best you can make out of this f8 bishop is playing bishop to e7. That can help prevent things here on g5. It's the only square for that bishop to go, so the bishop goes to f7, mostly to make room for castle. Though in some games you won't have a pawn on h6. It'll still be on h7, and then the bishop on e7 is useful to prevent the knight from being pinned to his queen. Bishop to bishop at c8 to c6. Black wants to trade off a bishop that was just recently on the home row, on the back row, on the 8th rank, in exchange for white's a2 bishop. I mean, this bishop is extremely powerful, and black wants it off the board. And so we do so in a way that can be okay or better for black in either event of whether the bishop at a2 initiates the swap of bishops, or the bishop at e6 initiates the swap of bishops. In either way, either event, there's nothing disrupting, for instance, black's ability to castle on either side. So that kind of consideration. Though we do want to know a2, bishop at a2 takes bishop at e6 is met with pawn at f7 takes e6. This is not bad, but we want to look into it because we're doubling pawns, and black might be a little bit weaker on the h5 to e8 diagonal. Castling happens to cure most of those problems, and where the f pawn ends up here on e6 allows for more control of the center, and what could possibly support a d6, d5 central push. Queen d8 to d7 with the idea of a sacrifice on the h file in mind should white decide to castle. He wouldn't make this sacrifice prior to castling. Active knight outpost, clearing the way for some potential attacking moves by white's queen on the queen side. And the knight goes to d4, where it's very powerful and contains an immediate extreme threat on the white queen at e2. You see that black has doubled pawns here. These are not bad doubled pawns. These pawns are doubled, and nonetheless they are strong. The force is strong. If your double pawns now will mow the lawn before I yawn. White hasn't been initiating the trade between bishops, so black does here, mostly because when the rook moves to a2 rather, when the rook moves to a2, black can get at the rook with tempo. It's undefended. It's certainly not connected to its lateral moving or horizontal moving pieces, the other rook and the queen. And there's scenarios where queen to e6 could become very serious against white because of a potential of a doubled attack. This would be, in some ways, principle of two weaknesses. If there was if this pawn were here, for instance, so if this pawn were, if h3 were standing on g4. I was thinking during the game, my mind moved. I made this move g6. It's probably the right move. soon, very soon. Maybe not instead of g6, but soon. J Wild, soon. J Wild must move from c8 to c3, really clogging the c file. And how easy would it be just to triple pieces that can attack along the file, the two rooks and the queen, and something like that occurs. I think I might have better pursued that strategy a move or two earlier than in the game. Let's see here. The engine says, Stockfish says, rook to c. Stockfish wants g6. Okay, right. G6, then to f4, and yeah, the computer's not maybe sees something wrong, or doesn't agree with this idea of going rook at c8 to c3 right away. Now with g6, we're cutting off ways that white could try to make an incursion, an attack, or an infiltration, or all three against black. Do we see c3? Rook to c3. Does that show up? I thought knight to d5 was a fine move here. It's not a natural immediate move, as the knight might be captured with e4 takes d5. But it turns out to be the correct move, because upon that capture, black can capture the bishop on g5 with his e7 bishop, and that leaves white with this kind of strange pawn on d5 that might be a weakness, or might frankly be captured outright and soon. So knight to d5, and then the exchange of dark squared bishops. Things got kind of intense here tactically, and I think black played through this portion accurately, nonetheless. Okay, yeah. So at least this part in from move about 17 and through about 22. It's tactical, and there's a lot of combination work involved. I want to point out one thing with regard to that, though. Bishop takes e7. There's this white bishop there. We're capturing with the king, with the queen, or with the knight. But importantly, we're going to play an intermezzo, which is I'm not afraid to raise the stakes up. That's what I think of sometimes when I do this. I'm raising the stakes. Right now the stake is recapturing a minor piece. The knight on d5 might go to c3. Patiently waiting for the day. I'm anxious. And the knight now on c3 is attacking prime real estate here. Prime personage, really. Both the queen and an undefended rook. An outright rook. Black's not necessarily threatening to win the exchange on the A file, but is instead threatening to win the rook outright. And this is quite tactical. The queen is going to have to move. Going to get the rook. White's going to have to spend a tempo to get his e7 dark squared bishop the heck out of there. So there's a lot of things going on. The knight is listening to rap, and here he goes. He's raising the stakes up, even in the direction of his attack. Oops. The arrows have it. So the queen has been attacked, and there's a little bit of a curveball, as the queen and rook are now together attacking f7, ready to try to checkmate Black's king. So it is not the rook that gets picked up by the knight, but rather the White's dark squared bishop on e7 by Black's queen. And now we see come to a point where you'll see in the next few moves, Black is going to aim at this. It's technically called a backward pawn here on c2, and it's weak. It's a fairly weak backward pawn, and Black wants to create a weakness there and either break through or use that as one part in a attack on two weaknesses. What played to g5, the best move, but we're looking at rook takes d3. Yes, yes. No, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Picking up a clear pawn here would have been. Yeah, that's definitely a blight in an otherwise excellent game. But this is the engine is pointing to rook at c3 could capture d3, and then upon recaptures, it's check on the first rank while picking up a rook. This pawn would be for the better. Yeah, all right. This pawn is almost pinned. It's I think they call it a slight pin. I picked up from there with some accurate attack on White's king side. I don't know. For some reason, because this was not where my opponent. That's weird. My opponent resigned just out of point of fact. That's a slight umbrage with the replaying here. My opponent resigned here. This is where the game ended. My opponent resigned here, and there's some extra moves here. And these extra moves, brilliance. I applaud and I laud Lichess.org and their team for making these moves here that weren't actually played in the game italicized. they're leaning, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Uh, Pisa. Like the Leaning Tower, these um, moves, these extra moves are italicized. And otherwise we would be spending like what's going on there, and they just show like the most logical continuation from the resigned position. It's black to move here, white has resigned. It was a great game. I had a lot of fun playing this game and a lot of fun reviewing it with you all, so thank you for watching. I'm More Gravity. Have a great night, or whatever it is where you are in the world, and even latitude or longitude affect this. So, if it's nighttime where you are, have a great night.